took the final drag from my cigarette and snuffed it out on the sole of my shoe. The sun had completely abandoned me now, and the chill of the night air raised bumps across my flesh. Amidst the persistent howls of the wind, I detected a faint, muffled sound emanating from some distant source. It resembled the cry of an animal, possibly a stray dog or coyote, but I couldn't be sure. The sound was barely audible against the droning of the wind that whistled through the busted windows, rising and falling at odd intervals. I expelled the smoke from my lungs into the air above me. As I watched the floating whispers of smoke slowly beginning to dissipate, my thoughts turned from my disturbing involvement with Kane to my enchanted memories of Sarah. Sarah came into my life a little over a year ago. She was a lover of the arts, and she had come to town when the fall semester convened to study classical painting and dance at the college. She took up residence in the dorms across from my apartment building. I can remember every subtle detail of her face. Her delicate features gave away her kindness and purity. Her soft, sensuous lips longed to be kissed, but had yet to find another worthy of their caress. Long, flowing strands of chestnut hair cascaded down the alluring slope of her shoulders and plunged further downward to the small of her back. But Sarah's eyes were the most salient aspect of her beauty. It was their intensity and unusual hue that first captured my attention. Her eyes were the purest green, like bottomless emerald pools that flowed to the depths of her divinity. And even though those eyes never found mine, she had given me more than any woman before her. Sometimes I watched her for hours from my front window as she lay in bed with her long, slender legs draped elegantly across the white satin sheets, an open book cradled in her hands. Some nights she spent hours poised in front of a canvas, painting, and I marveled at the beauty and grace of her movements. I couldn't turn away until I had memorized every contour of her face and every curve of her body, so I could carry her with me until the next time her heavenly image graced my waiting eyes. Sarah wasn't like the other girls at the college. While the majority of the female students wandered the streets in the evenings, staggering from bar to bar, polluting their bodies with foul chemicals and intoxicants, she chose to remain in her room alone, studying. While the other young women chose to spend their evenings philandering and randomly inviting strange men into their beds, Sarah chose to retain her virtue. I watched with great interest and anxiety as she resisted the clumsy advances of her many bumbling suitors. I knew these men weren't good enough for her, and I suspect she sensed this as well. I yearned for Sarah more than I ever had for any other woman, and even though I was 10 years her senior, I still entertained the tiniest gleam of hope that I could be the man for whom she was saving herself. My growing infatuation with Sarah instilled me with the courage to leave the confines of my apartment and ease my way back into society. I had reached a point where the obscured view from my tiny apartment window was no longer enough. I longed to be near her, so I followed her. It soon became clear to me that everywhere Sarah went, she went alone, and I began to feel closer to her, as if these were our times alone together. She sometimes spent her evenings at the local coffee house where she recited original poetry to the audience. I would remain concealed in the shadows of the darkest corner of the room, watching in amazement as she became lost in verse. Words flowed flawlessly from those gentle lips, penetrating my flesh and flowering in the depths of my once barren soul. As I listened to Sarah recite her beautiful compositions, I realized I was falling in love with her. felt I had to keep my feelings for Sarah a secret from Cain, but as I began devoting more time to her, the time I spent conversing with Cain began to diminish. Her very existence had allowed me to see life from a new perspective, one that contradicted everything Cain believed. Sarah reminded me how wonderful a woman could be, a memory that had atrophied under Cain's corruptive influence. His despicable accounts of sadistic torture and grisly murder that I once found so eerily compelling had become unbearable, for now I had given a face to his unfortunate victims. And the face was Sarah's. I couldn't bear the thought of the same fate befalling my beloved, so I had to protect her. However, Cain still had a powerful influence over me. Even though we had never met face to face, he had an uncanny, almost supernatural insight into my thoughts, and he became increasingly intolerant of my strange behavior. I should have known that it was just a matter of time before he got me to reveal myself. I simply refused him the audience that he so desperately needed and to which he had grown accustomed. Whereas I once listened intently to every minute detail of his brutal rituals, I now dismissed his insanity and pleaded with him to see the error of his ways. "Is there no end to your madness?" I asked him. "You can't continue spilling the blood of the innocent." "Innocent?" he replied. "Don't insult me. Not a single soul did I send to the grave that was innocent. They came willingly unto me, my friend, even though they were promised to another. They broke their sacred vows to forsake all others and betrayed the men to whom they were betrothed, to satisfy their own selfish carnal desires. The fate that befell them was fitting and just. Was their pain and suffering any greater than the man who discovers he has been betrayed by the woman he loves? I ask you, my friend, did you not wish for death to come and put an end to the agony and humiliation you suffered at the hands of your unfaithful wife? Who's to decide which sin is worse? A sin is a sin, and as long as women are willing to commit this sin against men, then I will continue to seek retribution." I gazed hypnotically into the lantern's small, luminous flame. I suddenly realized that Cain had manipulated me once again. He got me to tell him about my wife's death, and he eventually got me to reveal my feelings for Sarah. Now he had lured me to his secret hideaway in the middle of nowhere. Outside, the winds continued to assault the battered walls of the ancient house with malevolent force. The distant wailing of the wildlife and the howling winds played on like an eerie, haunted symphony. I walked to the window to get a look at the night sky. There was a storm coming. I could see the faint, distant flashes of lightning on the horizon, like tiny explosions illuminating the dark autumn sky. Cain was on his way.